Hi class, my name is Myla Nurse and I'm delivering my presentation on the article Senate Bill 274, The Law and Multi-Parent Families by Deborah H. Wald. My presentation will cover the changes brought through SB 274 and how many courts interpreted and applied the Uniform Parentage Act prior to SB 274. The use of Family Code 7612B and how SB 274 gave the courts an invaluable tool to help a child keep parental bonds and prevent trauma from severing those bonds unnecessarily. I will discuss the elements of SB 274 and how it can and cannot be applied. These elements include Family Code 7612C, subsection Family Code 405765D, subsection Family Code 3040D, and the codification of the Supreme Court's holding in Sharon S. versus Superior Court. Prior to SB 274, many courts applied the Uniform Parentage Act to mean that courts are prohibited from recognizing more than two people as the parent of a child, regardless of the circumstance. This commonly meant that if there were any other qualifying parents that were not the child's biological parents, they would be severed from the child's life when it comes to physical and legal custody. Additionally, California does not offer visitation to non-parents except under extremely limited circumstances. This eliminated the child's access to adults that they had understood to be their parents and relied upon as parents. Prior to SB 274, Family Code 7612B was interpreted to mean the courts lacked discretion to confirm the presumptions of two or more people, thereby causing a child to have more than two legal parents. In two separate decisions, California Supreme Courts determined that a child had more than two legal parents and that the matter of whether a child could have more than two legal parents is still an open question. When SB 274 was enacted in 2014, this provided the courts with a legal tool to use their discretion to determine whether a child had more than two legal parents. However, it is important to keep in mind that absent a finding of detriment by a court, a child will continue to only have two parents. Family Code 7612C defines the court's discretion to consider how eliminating an adult from a child's life that qualifies as a legal parent would cause detriment to a child. This section also states that the court will have continued discretion to cull the herd of legal parents if there are more than two. SB 274 codified the Supreme Court's holding in Sharon S. versus Superior Court, meaning that the provisions of the adoption statutes that terminate parental rights upon granting adoption can now be waived, allowing for second and third parent adoptions if a court finds this to be in the best interest of the child being adopted. SB 274 added subsection Family Code 405765D. This new subsection is applied to cases where a child has been found by a court to have more than two legal parents. The child support obligations are divided among the parents based on incomes and the amount of time each parent spends with the child. The courts have found this confusing. The author's office has approached the Judicial Council about creating additional guidance on the process. Family Code 3040D, added in by SB 274, provides that the courts will not be required to allocate parenting time in a manner that is not in a child's best interest. The criteria for the court's assessment of what is in the child's best interest is, but not limited to, the child's need for continuity and stability and preserving established patterns of care and emotional bonds. The court can determine that not all parents will share legal and or physical custody of the child, dependent on what is in the child's best interest. SB 274 does not create any new ways for people to be recognized as parents. SB 274 has made no changes to the statutes that address how a person gains parental status. SB 274 does not mean that a child automatically has more than two parents. Remember that unless the court determines the elimination of legal parents, will cause detriment to the child will continue to only have two parents. SB 274 does not invalidate California's child support guidelines. SB 274 does not invalidate the current child support guidelines, but provides a new formula for Family Section 4055 to determine child support. The courts have found this new formula can be confusing, and the author's office is seeking to create additional guidance. SB 274 will not turn caretaking grandparents and step-parents into legal parents. To become a parent under the Uniform Parentage Act without actually being a biological parent, a person has to either A, be married or in a registered domestic partnership with the child's mother, or B, have received the child into the person's home and openly held that child out as their natural child. Grandparents commonly hold children out to the world as grandchildren. Same with step-parents. They commonly acknowledge they are not the parents. When grandparents and step-parents do meet the criteria of being legal parents under the Uniform Parentage Act, courts can grant this as an exception, but this is never meant to be the rule. SB 274 will not force courts to allocate parenting time between more than two parents. The courts will exercise their discretion to do what's in the best interest of the child when determining legal and physical custody, as well as visitation rights. Based on my analysis of this article, prior to SB 274 being enacted, majority of courts used the Uniform Parentage Act to eliminate additional people from the child's life outside of the two legal parents. Two courts in California and two separate decisions used the Family Code 2712B to legally provide the child had more than two legal parents, and the courts lacked the discretion to confirm the presumptions of two or more people. Since SB 274 was enacted, it has served as a useful tool to courts, allowing them to prevent the child from unnecessary trauma of severing them from an adult they presumed was their parent or cared for them and were a part of their regular pattern. SB 274 accounts for its changes to the system through added subsections to Family Code regarding child support, adoption, and the difference between caring for a child and being a legal parent. In conclusion, SB 274 is a sound solution to the problem of the majority of courts interpreting the Uniform Parental Act to eliminate any additional parents from a child's life outside of the two legal parents. The Uniform Parental Act was not an adequate one-size-fits-all solution, and in some cases, it would cause trauma to the child by removing a caring, stable, perceived parent from a child's life. In the example case in the article, it discusses the case of REMC, how there were three people in the child's life who could be seen as the child's parents, and the court's decision granted legal parental rights to all three. The Court of Appeals reversed its decision, eliminating one of the legal parents from the child's life by stating a child cannot have more than two parents without specific authorization from the legislature. That's exactly what SB 274 was created to remedy. What I've learned from this article is how SB 274 changed the way courts make decisions regarding a child having more than two parents, and the history of how the courts ruled on this type of case previously. Thanks for listening in, and I hope you enjoyed this presentation.